Welcome back to our service material reading of the Hospitals and Institutions Manual. This section is part of 6 sections. The final section is resources, which will not be read. For a copy of this manual, please check the description box below for a link to an electronic copy. This section covers the portion in our manual titled Treatment, taking a Hospitals and Institutions panel into treatment facilities. Introduction. Before reading this section, be sure you have read the section entitled General Information. That section covers most of the important basics of hospitals and institutions work. This section expands on those basics as they apply specifically to H&I in a treatment setting. We have used the word treatment to include all facilities which have a goal of helping addicts to live clean and/or as responsible, productive members of society. These facilities will include short-term treatment, long-term treatment, therapeutic communities, rehabs, recovery houses, half and three-quarter houses, detoxification centers, and psychiatric wards. The information included covers our purpose and relationship with facilities, making initial contacts and presentations to facilities, and setting up H&I meetings presentations. The section on setting up H&I meetings encompasses selection of a format, a sample format, and special considerations for specific types of facilities. There is also a list of do's and don'ts. Even though you may only be directly concerned with one particular type of facility, it is important that you read the entire treatment section to gain as much help as possible in your H&I service efforts. Purpose. The purpose of an H&I meeting presentation is to carry the message to addicts who do not have full access to regular Narcotics Anonymous meetings. H&I meetings, presentations, except for those in longer-term facilities, are intended to simply introduce those attending to recovery through the program of Narcotics Anonymous. One of the most important tasks of an H&I subcommittee in clarifying its own purpose is to establish its priorities. Usually, the highest priority is given to facilities which house addicts who cannot attend any regular NA meetings. Some treatment facilities fall into this category. Treatment centers which allow some limited access to regular meetings are somewhat lower on the priority list. These decisions about priorities are not clear-cut, particularly when residents are allowed limited access to outside meetings. If we are not making an effort to inform these addicts about Narcotics Anonymous, then we are leaving it up to the facilities to inform them about us, or we are leaving them uninformed. It is important that these residents learn about NA from informed members of our fellowship. H&I meetings presentations have the advantage of the question and answer period, which allows residents to address specific questions and concerns about Narcotics Anonymous with members of Narcotics Anonymous. Decisions about priorities may become quite difficult. For example, recent graduates of particular facilities may have a strong desire to see their facility served. Decisions about priorities must be made more objectively than that. Our resources are limited, and no subcommittee can effectively meet every possible need. The quality of meetings is more important than their quantity. Our primary purpose is not best served when we allow ourselves to become overcommitted. Our relationships with facilities. We should make it clear from our earliest contact with the facility staff that we have no opinions on treatment methods or any issues other than recovery from addiction through the application of the program of Narcotics Anonymous. It is important that Narcotics Anonymous and our H&I service efforts remain clearly separate from any facility in which we provide services. Efforts must be made to be sure this is understood by the facility, the residents, and the H&I workers. The principles of NA are often quite different from, or even in conflict with, the principles taught by the treatment centers or other fellowships the residents may be required to attend. This often causes confusion among the residents. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the language used in meetings. Perhaps an initial statement at the H&I meeting presentation regarding our use of language consistent with our literature and explaining our literature in terms of our first step and sixth tradition could be helpful. Those who do H&I service work need to realize the limitations we place on ourselves in order to remain consistent with our traditions while providing H&I services. If a member who is doing H&I work does not clearly understand that NA does not approve or disapprove of any treatment methods, these issues must be addressed directly with that member. Attending learning days and H&I subcommittee meetings are good ways to inform members who are willing to be of service in H&I. Encourage all those who do H&I work to become familiar with this handbook, local guidelines, and specific facility rules and policies. If you are involved with an existing H&I meeting presentation where there is not a clear understanding of our relationship to the facility, you may wish to take the following actions to improve understanding. Be sure you have read the general information section of this handbook thoroughly. 1. Make sure you are familiar with this handbook. 2. If the facility has not assigned a staff member to serve as your contact person, try to get one designated. Make an appointment to see the contact person. Ask if there are any issues the facility would like to discuss with or communicate to the H&I subcommittee. If you are asked questions that you aren't sure how to answer, don't hesitate to admit that you aren't prepared to answer right now. Explain that you will take the question to the subcommittee for discussion and report back. 5. Present issues or questions that the H&I workers feel need to be clarified with the facility. Be open-minded. Often, what seems to be a problem is resolved by improved communication. 6. Our relationship with the facility may need to be reestablished each time there is a change in staff contact person, administration, or H&I panel coordinator. Occasionally, facilities want us to become involved in ways which are outside our primary purpose. We may become aware of this during an initial presentation or as a result of changes in existing policies. In spite of our desire to carry the message of NA recovery to the residents, we cannot negotiate our traditions. The principles by which we recover become diluted when we do not uphold our traditions. For example, we do not participate in staff training, nor make presentations to residents about medical aspects of addiction or the effects of various substances. We do not monitor and report on residents' behavior. That is the responsibility of the staff. If issues like these cannot be resolved, we cannot hold a meeting presentation at the facility. Even in these cases, we try to keep communications open in case the situation changes. The keys to a satisfactory relationship with the facility are a thorough knowledge of the application of our 12 steps and 12 traditions to H&I work and good communications. How to start a hospitals and institutions meeting presentation. The initial approach to start an H&I meeting presentation should be done by an area H&I subcommittee, coordinating efforts with public information where applicable. Sometimes a facility will approach the H&I subcommittee and ask to have an H&I meeting presentation brought in. Once we are contacted, we set up an appointment. If we are not able to support a meeting, we explain at the appointment that we cannot service their request at this time and will maintain communication with them. We also may provide them with the WSO product catalog and make them aware of reaching out, the NA, way, tapes approved for sale by the WSO, and the availability of NA literature. Sometimes the H&I subcommittee will approach the facility to propose a meeting presentation. This can be done with a phone call or through a form letter. In any case, be sure that this is a team H&I effort. Do not act alone. 1. A phone call should be made only by a person appointed by the H&I subcommittee to establish contact with the facility. 2. When writing a letter, place on letterhead stationery and type in business format. Keep a copy for the area H&I subcommittee files. Follow-up letters with phone calls. Contact initiated by the H&I subcommittee should only occur if you are prepared to support an H&I meeting presentation. Once contact with the appropriate facility representative has been made, set up an appointment. Whether or not a meeting presentation is established, try to get a contact person at the facility. Make the appointment and be there on time. This may be a joint response from the public information and H&I subcommittee members. Dress appropriately and be courteous. Remember, you are seen as representing Narcotics Anonymous. Bring pamphlets, literature, local meeting schedules with you, and discuss our 12 steps and 12 traditions, this handbook, and your local guidelines. Explain what an H&I meeting presentation is and is not. What NA offers, we carry a message of recovery from the disease of addiction through the 12 steps and 12 traditions of Narcotics Anonymous, offering an opportunity to each individual to improve the quality of his/her life, both inside the facility and after release from the facility. NA is not a benevolent society. We are not amateur social or welfare workers. We do not do any counseling or education of staff or residents. We do not provide jobs, housing, money, etc., or letters of reference to judicial systems. The only thing that we have to offer is a message of recovery from active addiction, what the facility requires from Narcotics Anonymous. We must adhere to their rules and regulations, i.e. dress code, their do's and don'ts, clean time requirements, if any, etc. Get specifics about the facility's requirements in writing. If possible, see Form in Appendix B, page 120. If reference letters, sunshine letters, are needed, they are available through the WSO H&I coordinator. Meeting, presentation formats. There are many different types of facilities with different rules and regulations. We offer some general guidelines for choosing a format for the meeting, presentation, and a general outline around which to develop your own format. One thing which is common to all H&I meetings is that they are closed unless by invitation of the panel leader or the H&I subcommittee. When choosing a format, the first thing to consider is the 5th tradition. Each group has but one primary purpose: to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. The format should provide a structure which ensures that the NA message of recovery is carried. For this reason, open sharing types of meetings are not used in the H&I setting. They tend to lend themselves to an atmosphere which is inappropriate for an H&I meeting presentation. The best formats are those in which outside members are delivering a message of recovery in Narcotics Anonymous. The best examples are speaker presentations, panel presentations, question and answer, literature discussions, and topic discussions. Presentations should be limited to 1 hour. The following is a general format for an NA-H&I meeting presentation. It may be modified according to local needs or customs. It is presented here for those seeking some direction. Remember, it is our responsibility to maintain an atmosphere of recovery. A. Introduce yourself and welcome everyone to the meeting. B. Have a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. C. Invite all attending the meeting presentation to give their first names. D. Briefly explain that this is a hospitals and institutions meeting presentation. Because residents' access to regular NA meetings is limited, the Area Service H&I Subcommittee is bringing this special meeting here. E. At this time, have residents volunteer to read from conference-approved literature. Usually, who is an addict? What is the NA program? How it works? Why are we here? Or other selections are used. F. Depending on the format selected, proceed as follows. After the speakers have finished, there will be time for any questions. There will be no cross-discussion while anyone is sharing. Please hold your questions until the end of the meeting. Specific formats. There are many different meeting formats that may be used, however. Whichever format is chosen, it is important that the H and I panel maintain control in the meeting presentation. Many times, the use of extremely liberal meeting formats will cause the meeting to be unruly and difficult to control. Speaker presentation. Appropriate for both long and short-term facilities. In a speaker meeting, one or more NA members share their experience, strength, and hope. That tends to lay out some basic symptoms and characteristics of the disease and shows how NA has brought about recovery. A narrative of events accomplishes little, but a sharing of feelings, self-image, turning points, new awareness, etc. carries a powerful message of recovery and the fact that our disease is progressive, incurable, and fatal. A. Introduce yourself and welcome everyone to the meeting. B. Have a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. C. Invite all attending the meeting presentation to give their first names. D. Briefly explain that this is a hospitals and institutions meeting presentation. Because residents' access to regular NA meetings is limited, the Area Service H&I Subcommittee is bringing this special meeting here. E. At this time, have residents volunteer to read from conference-approved literature. Usually, who is an addict? What is the NA program? How it works? Why are we here? Or other selections are used. F. Depending on the format selected, proceed as follows. After the speakers have finished, there will be time for any questions. There will be no cross-discussion while anyone is sharing. Please hold your questions until the end of the meeting. G. Introduce the speaker or speakers. H. Leave sufficient time for questions and discussion at the end of the presentation. I make any announcements that are pertinent, i.e. meeting directories or literature being available, speakers available to talk after the presentation, etc. J. Close with the prayer of your choice. Panel presentation. Appropriate for both long and short-term facilities. This is similar to a speaker presentation. Rather than all sharing on the same topic, panel members usually take one aspect of recovery in NA each and share on that subject. This way, topics that supply a variety of relevant information and experience on different subjects can be selected in advance. A. Introduce yourself and welcome everyone to the meeting. B. Have a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. C. Invite all attending the meeting presentation to give their first names. D. Briefly explain that this is a hospitals and institutions meeting presentation. Because residents' access to regular NA meetings is limited, the Area Service H&I Subcommittee is bringing this special meeting here. E. At this time, have residents volunteer to read from conference-approved literature. Usually, who is an addict? What is the NA program? How it works? Why are we here? Or other selections are used. F. Depending on the format selected, proceed as follows. After the speakers have finished, there will be time for any questions. There will be no cross-discussion while anyone is sharing. Please hold your questions until the end of the meeting. G. Explain how the format works. Each member of the panel shares on one topic or on separate topics, and then there will be time for questions and discussion. H. Introduce the panel members one at a time to make their presentation. You should discuss the length in advance so that the timing works out. I make any announcements that are pertinent, i.e. meeting directories or literature being available, panel members are available to talk after the presentation, etc. J. Leave sufficient time for questions and discussion at end of meeting. K. Close with a prayer of your choice. Topic discussion. Appropriate only in long-term facilities. This type of meeting presentation allows for the participation of the residents. This format differs from open participation in that more structure is provided for the discussion. One or two members from the outside should share first to set the tone and direction of the meeting. It is a good idea to keep another experienced member in reserve to call on if the discussion gets away from recovery from addiction. The leader or chairperson should call on speakers one at a time rather than letting the discussion go spontaneously. This will allow for more control in keeping the meeting recovery-oriented. A. Introduce yourself and welcome everyone to the meeting. B. Have a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. C. Invite all attending the meeting presentation to give their first names. D. Briefly explain that this is a hospitals and institutions meeting presentation. Because residents' access to regular NA meetings is limited, the Area Service H&I Subcommittee is bringing this special meeting here. E. At this time, have residents volunteer to read from conference-approved literature. Usually, who is an addict? What is the NA program? How it works? Why are we here? Or other selections are used. F. Depending on the format selected, proceed as follows. After the speakers have finished, there will be time for any questions. There will be no cross-discussion while anyone is sharing. Please hold your questions until the end of the meeting. G. Introduce the topic and share first to set a recovery-oriented tone. H. Call on several residents and then a panel member repeating this process. I. Make any announcements that are pertinent, i.e. meeting directories or literature being available. Panel members are available to talk after the meeting, etc. J. Close with the prayer of your choice. Topics should be chosen carefully, with the 12 steps and 12 traditions in mind. There are a multitude of topics that relate to our personal recovery in NA. There are also many topics that have nothing to do with recovery. It is important to remember in H&I meetings, presentations, that we are dealing with addicts who are relatively inexperienced with recovery. When we select the topic for an H&I meeting, their needs should be considered first. The following list is not complete, but you will find a number of topics that are appropriate for most H&I meetings presentations. You are not restricted to this list by any means. It is only presented as a resource so that you may get some ideas. Some suggested topics. 1. Any IP or selection from the basic text. 2. HOW, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. 3. Surrender. 4. Acceptance, the basics, don't use, meetings, phone numbers, literature, sponsor, and the steps. 6. Halts. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or serious. 7. Responsible for our own recovery. 8. Freedom from active addiction. 9. Identify rather than compare. 10. Spiritual, not religious program. 11. Going to any lengths. 12. Transition to the fellowship from treatment. 13. Tools of the fellowship. 14. Letting go. 15. Feelings. 16. Learning to trust. Giving up old playmates, playgrounds, and playthings. Living just for today. The first 3 steps: denial, reservations. 22. Sponsorship, literature discussion. Appropriate for both long and short-term facilities. For a literature discussion meeting, parts of the basic text or other conference-approved literature are read and discussed. Passing the literature around and allowing everyone a chance to read can be an easy way to get the residents involved. If you do that, though, be sure to include in the format a statement like, "Feel free to pass the literature along if you'd rather not read. Not everyone is willing or able to read out loud." A. Introduce yourself and welcome everyone to the meeting. B. Have a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. C. Invite all attending the meeting presentation to give their first names. D. Briefly explain that this is a hospitals and institutions meeting presentation. Because residents' access to regular NA meetings is limited, the Area Service H&I Subcommittee is bringing this special meeting here. E. At this time, have residents volunteer to read from conference-approved literature. Usually, who is an addict? What is the NA program? How it works? Why are we here? Or other selections are used. F. Depending on the format selected, proceed as follows. After the speakers have finished, there will be time for any questions. There will be no cross-discussion while anyone is sharing. Please hold your questions until the end of the meeting. G. Explain how the format works. We'll read through the selected literature, stopping periodically to share, or read through entire piece of literature before sharing. H. Introduce the panel members. I. Begin the reading of the selected piece of conference-approved literature. Residents can be involved with the sharing, but if it gets out of hand, be sure to have a panel member prepared to shift the tone back to recovery. J. Make any announcements that are pertinent, i.e. meeting directories or literature being available. Panel members are available to talk after the meeting, etc. K. Close with the prayer of your choice, questions and answers. The question and answer format allows residents to write or state questions and topics they might feel frightened or embarrassed about. This format seems to be especially well received at adolescent facilities. The panel leader asks the residents to write topics or questions that are of concern to them and place them in a basket. After introducing the format, the questions are pulled one at a time and one or two of the panel members respond. If the question has already been adequately addressed, the next question would be drawn, and so on. The panel leader must judge whether a topic or question is appropriate to the meeting presentation before it is read out loud. If not, just move on to the next question. A. Introduce yourself and welcome everyone to the meeting. B. Have a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. C. Invite all attending the meeting presentation to give their first names. D. Briefly explain that this is a hospitals and institutions meeting presentation. Because residents' access to regular NA meetings is limited, the Area Service H&I Subcommittee is bringing this special meeting here. E. At this time, have residents volunteer to read from conference-approved literature. Usually, who is an addict? What is the NA program? How it works? Why are we here? Or other selections are used. F. Depending on the format selected, proceed as follows. After the speakers have finished, there will be time for any questions. There will be no cross-discussion while anyone is sharing. Please hold your questions until the end of the meeting. G. Explain how the format works. Residents write topics or questions they would like discussed and place them in a basket, or residents simply ask questions they would like to have discussed. H. Introduce the panel members. I. The topics are drawn out of the basket and addressed by the panel one at a time. Inappropriate topics should not be read out loud. J. Make any announcements that are pertinent, i.e. meeting directories or literature being available, panel members are available to talk after the meeting, etc. K. Close with the prayer of your choice. Step study. Appropriate for long-term facilities. A step study meeting may be held in an H&I setting. The basic text, Narcotics Anonymous, or other conference-approved literature is used to read the step, and then the material is discussed. It is important to have members on the panel who have practiced the particular step being studied. This type of meeting presentation usually works well in longer-term facilities where the residents have had some previous exposure to the Narcotics Anonymous program of recovery. This format allows the residents of the facility to have more participation. A. Introduce yourself and welcome everyone to the meeting. B. Have a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. C. Invite all attending the meeting presentation to give their first names. D. Briefly explain that this is a hospitals and institutions meeting presentation. Because residents' access to regular NA meetings is limited, the Area Service H&I Subcommittee is bringing this special meeting here. E. At this time, have residents volunteer to read from conference-approved literature. Usually, who is an addict? What is the NA program? How it works? Why are we here? Or other selections are used. F. Depending on the format selected, proceed as follows. After the speakers have finished, there will be time for any questions. There will be no cross-discussion while anyone is sharing. Please hold your questions until the end of the meeting. G. Explain how the format works. We'll read through the selected step, stopping periodically to share or read through an entire piece of literature before sharing. H. Introduce the panel members. I. Begin the reading of the selected step from conference-approved literature. Residents can be involved with the sharing, but if it gets out of hand, be sure to have a panel member prepared to shift the tone back to recovery. J. Make any announcements that are pertinent, i.e. meeting directories or literature being available, panel members are available to talk after the meeting, etc. K. Close with the prayer of your choice. General hints about conducting H&I meetings presentations. A Q question and answer session can be included somewhere toward the end of the meeting presentation regardless of the format you use. When answering questions, it is important to remember that NA has no opinion on outside issues. Frequently, the residents want us to discuss issues that do not pertain to NA. Some examples are, do I need to stay in treatment? What about other fellowships or recovery programs? Should I stay on the medication the doctor gives me? And many others. Do not be drawn into these discussions. Don't hesitate to say, I'm sorry, I have no experience I can share with you on that subject. Even when you do have personal experience on such outside issues, it is important to remain consistent with the 10th tradition and not discuss it in this setting. Always remember to only share your experience, strength, and hope about your recovery. In Narcotics Anonymous, we may not have all the answers to their questions, but we can always convey a feeling of acceptance and interest in the person who asked. That may do more than the information contained in our answers. The duration of the average resident stay should be considered when selecting a meeting presentation format. You may wish to use a different format for each week of the month. This might be especially beneficial in a long-term facility. For example, week 1, speaker, week 2, panel, week 3, panel with time. For discussion, week 4, step. Another factor to consider is whether or not the residents are medicated. Our experience has shown that medicated residents cannot effectively participate in meetings. Therefore, speakers or panel formats are better suited for presentations in facilities which medicate their residents. If you cannot provide a weekly H&I meeting presentation, perhaps a panel can be taken in once a month. Literature and meeting schedules may be supplied, or the facility can be encouraged to buy NA literature for its residents. Make sure the facility is aware of reaching out. The NA Way and speaker tapes approved for sale through the WSO. Try to avoid a return to old attitudes when you walk into a facility. We need to remember that ours is a program of attraction, and our attraction lies in the ways we have changed. Our follow-up. A. Maintain correspondence with the staff contact person in the facility to keep communication lines open and to be aware of any developing situations. B. Report and discuss progress and problems at the area H&I subcommittee. Meeting regularly. C. Once a meeting presentation is well established as a healthy environment for recovery. Encourage NA members within the facility to participate. D. Make sure meeting lists and helpline numbers are available to members upon release from the facility. E. Be aware of any changes in contact person or administration and make a repeat presentation if necessary. F. Keep copies of all relevant correspondence at the area subcommittee level. G. Encourage NA members within facilities to write to Reaching Out or the NA Way magazine. H. Be sure current copies of Reaching Out are brought into the facility. It may become necessary to temporarily shut down an H&I meeting presentation for a variety of reasons, such as changes in facility policies or lack of adequate manpower in the local H&I subcommittee. If such a situation should arise, it is of paramount importance that the H&I subcommittee continue to supply the facility with meeting schedules as well as any literature as may be deemed appropriate. In the event that an H&I meeting is shut down due to the negligence or misconduct of a member of the H&I subcommittee, it is important that several objective members of the H&I subcommittee take all steps necessary within our guidelines to reconcile the situation and resume the meeting presentation. Above all, we must remember that our primary purpose is to carry the NA message of recovery to addicts who cannot get to us. Types of treatment facilities. First, short-term facilities, detox centers. When doing H&I work in detoxification centers, keep in mind that the addicts you are working with are in the earliest stage of recovery. Your subcommittee should also be aware of the type of detox center with which you are working. Some serve as interim care for addicts who are waiting to go to a treatment unit and may therefore remain in the detox for 2 or 3 weeks. Others are short-term only with a maximum stay of 3 to 7 days. The panel format is suggested for meetings, presentations held in detoxification centers. You may wish to allow time for a brief discussion and/or questions about NA. Do not plan a meeting presentation which lasts more than 1 hour. These addicts will often be in withdrawal with scattered thinking and short attention spans. Because of the physical and mental state of these addicts, topics for the meeting should be selected carefully. There is a need for panel members to talk about what it used to be like so that the addicts in the facility can identify. Be sure that the NA members you take are able to talk about their using without glorifying it. In addition to talking about what it used to be like, the panel will wish to discuss what happened when they were in the earliest stages of recovery. Some suggested topics include denial, step 1, just for today, we do recover, or my first NA meeting. It is a good idea for panel members to also speak about what it's like now, but they should remember that these addicts will not be as likely to identify with what our lives are like after living. Clean for a while. Your subcommittee will have clean time requirements, and the facility may have some requirements too. Try to include at least one panel member with the minimum amount of clean time required. Often newcomers will identify more readily with a relative newcomer than with a member with long-term clean time. There are a variety of methods used to detoxify addicts. Some methods include the use of medication. Narcotics Anonymous has no opinion on methods of detoxification, while a member doing H&I work may wish to simply state that NA is a program of complete abstinence from all drugs. No member should ever advise someone in a detox to refuse the method of detoxification used by the center. We do not deal with the rules or procedures of any facility in which we do H&I work. 28-day facilities. These facilities may utilize various methods of detoxing residents. Once again, we are reminded that Narcotics Anonymous has no opinion on methods of detoxification. In these facilities, as in detoxes, it is important to keep in mind that the addicts you are carrying the NA message to are in the earliest stage of recovery. It is therefore important that the H&I subcommittee refer to the previous section, Detox Centers, for additional information. It may be appropriate to change the meeting format weekly so that the residents are exposed to 4 different formats during their 28-day stay. Formats recommended include speaker meetings, topic discussion, questions and answers, and literature basic text discussion. Some topics might include the basics, the first 3 steps, sponsorship, we do recover, just for today, etc. Some facilities encourage residents to attend regular NA meetings during their treatment. The H&I panel may inform residents about regular meetings, covering such topics as the language used in NA meetings, meeting formats, etc. You may also provide them with meeting lists. Outpatient facilities. When H&I committees carry our message to addicts who otherwise have full access to regular Narcotics Anonymous meetings, an unnecessary drain is placed on already limited H&I resources. Addicts in outpatient treatment settings generally have full access to regular NA meetings. Where this is the case, H&I meetings are not appropriate. H&I subcommittees may choose to make meeting schedules available to such facilities and provide them with order forms for our literature. Also, they may ask public information to do presentations. Long-term facilities. First, recovery houses and therapeutic communities. Recovery houses and therapeutic communities which house residents for longer than 28 days are considered long-term facilities. The H&I services which are provided by the area or region are performed in a variety of ways. Successful H&I meetings, presentations, and long-term facilities usually use the panel system. Since NA meetings are not therapy groups, and residents in these facilities often easily fall into their familiar therapy group behavior in an NA meeting. Panels often work well to avoid that problem and maintain an atmosphere appropriate to an H&I meeting presentation. The panel system format may consist of speaker presentations, panel presentations, topic discussions, step study, or literature discussions. These formats will give the residents an idea of recovery from the disease of addiction by hearing the panel members share their experience, strength, and hope. The fact that these residents will be leaving and eventually be back in society is of importance to the panel coordinator. With this knowledge, the panel coordinator can coordinate meeting presentation formats to give the residents the best opportunity for experiencing recovery in the Narcotics Anonymous program when they leave the facility. The H&I panel may inform the residents of the terminology used in NA meetings to better acquaint them with the Narcotics Anonymous program. Meeting lists may be given to the residents upon their release. The most important thing an H&I subcommittee can give the residents is hope that there is recovery in Narcotics Anonymous. Halfway houses or three-quarters houses. These types of facilities are usually for addicts who are newly released from jails, hospitals, or treatment facilities. Some of these places have a structured program and some do not. We have found that panel presentations, question and answer, or topic discussion are the best types of meeting presentation formats for these facilities. Because the residents usually have free access to outside meetings, these types of facilities should not be considered as having high priority for H&I. Meetings, presentations in these settings should be structured to avoid having the meeting become a therapy group. Within that structured meeting, you may wish to encourage more participation from the residents and suggest that they attend outside meetings where possible. Our role with facilities that provide medication to their clients' residents. During the initial planning meetings with the facility, we must be very clear about what NA is and what our basic message is. NA is a program of complete abstinence from all drugs. We have no opinions on outside issues and our approach is non-professional, so we must be very sure that it is understood that we do not advocate going against a physician's advice. Neither do we endorse the use of any drug. In facilities which provide medication, residents inevitably ask the question, "Am I clean if the doctor has me on medication?" When that question comes up, it is important not to judge. Based on our 8th and 10th traditions, we are not in a position to discuss the issue. We can only tell them to keep coming back, they are welcome at meetings, and to read the basic text. The people on the H&I panels should not tell residents to stop taking their medication. We are not doctors. Interaction with the staff. Our relationship with the staff of the facility is important for the continued success of the H&I meeting presentation. Although the staff's designated contact person may be on the administrative level, our week-to-week interaction will most likely be with the other staff. It is important that we establish a rapport with these staff members that will make it much easier to deal with any difficulties that may come up. This positive relationship will facilitate everything from making sure that there is a table to put the literature on to handling a resident who has a seizure during the meeting presentation. At some H&I meetings presentations, a staff person may be expected to attend. We should make it clear, not only at the initial stage of setting up the meeting, but also on an ongoing basis, that their role will be as observers only. This also applies if the staff member happens to be a member of NA while this person is, functioning as an employee of the facility. They wouldn't be able to share about NA without the residents becoming confused about NA's relationship with the facility. This is in keeping with our traditions concerning non-professionalism and non-affiliation, Tradition 8 and 6, working with adolescents. There are some issues that should be taken into consideration when working with adolescents. Please refer to the earlier section in Unit 1 under General Information section. Do's and don'ts for H&I work in treatment facilities. Do follow the guidance found in the WSC H&I Handbook. Treatment facility rules. Do attempt to get the treatment facility agreements in writing. Do clarify the rules with whomever you bring into the facility. Do adhere to the security regulations at all times. Do arrive early to set up meeting. Do keep the staff informed of your whereabouts. Do obey the dress code. Exercise common sense. Panel leaders and members. Do screen all panel members, speakers, and chairpersons. Do adhere to the clean time requirements of the treatment facility and the H&I committee. Do ensure that a clear NA message of recovery is carried by all panel members. Literature. Do make directories of outside meetings available to the residents. Do use the literature recommended for H&I work. Do stamp all literature with the local phone line number. Do provide facilities with literature order forms and encourage the facility to supply its own NA literature. Treatment facility meetings. Do start and end on time. Do explain briefly during the meeting what H&I is. Do clearly state that Narcotics Anonymous is separate from the treatment facility and from other fellowships. Do emphasize that NA recovery is available to all addicts, regardless of drugs used. Do explain the language that we use: addict, clean recovery, clean time, and why we use it. The first step of NA and sixth tradition of NA, residents meeting participation. Do involve residents with the meeting, especially those in long-term treatment facilities readings EET Sierra Doe. Emphasize the importance of getting to an NA meeting the first day out of the treatment facility. Do emphasize the importance of a sponsor, regular NA meeting attendance, and group commitments after release. Panel leaders and members. Don't bring any contraband items or weapons into the treatment facility. Don't take messages and carry letters in or out of the facility. Don't show favoritism to any resident or residents. Don't bring an NA member who has friends and or family in the treatment facility. Don't wear flashy jewelry and don't carry excessive cash. Don't use excessive profanity. Don't attend H&I facilities alone. Facility guidelines. Don't debate any issue involving the treatment facility's rules, regulations, programs, or other fellowships with residents and staff. Don't discuss conditions within the treatment facility. Don't discuss treatment staff members with resident or residents. Don't discuss resident or residents with the treatment facility staff. Don't sponsor residents in the treatment facility that you are attending as an H&I member. Don't accept money or gifts from or give money or gifts to any resident. Meeting guidelines. Don't give anyone within the facility your address or telephone number. Don't provide anyone with another NA member's address or telephone number. Don't bring in anyone who is not supposed to be there. Sponsee, friends, guests. Don't break another person's anonymity. Don't emphasize using days while sharing an NA message of recovery. This concludes Unit 2, which deals with H&I and treatment facilities. Unit 3 will cover corrections.